Welcome to Landwards, the podcast for the land-based engineering community, brought to you by the Institution of Agricultural Engineers.
Hello and welcome to the Landwards podcast. I'm your host and Landwards editor, Andy Newbold, and I'm joined today by Staffordshire farmer and iAgri member Andrew Court. Hello, Andrew.
Good afternoon, Andy. Good afternoon, everybody.
Thanks for joining us, Andrew. Let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Although, as you mentioned, I am a farmer, I don't come specifically from a farming background. My mother was a milk recorder and her family were farmers. But my dad and all of his family were in construction. They were designers and surveyors. And I sort of grew up with him going off to work on rather big projects, such as hospitals and airports and things like that. And I didn't really get into my farming until I was 12, when my grandmother sadly passed away, and suddenly my uncle, who was a bachelor and lived on his own, needed support from his sisters, and I was thrown into this incredible world. That's sort of the bare bones of where things got started.
What about through education? What about in school? Did anything happen in school which made you think, I think farming or agricultural engineering, anything spur you on?
So I think engineering was on the cards from a very young age, or design. I was always inspired by the television programs that I watched. There was a particular version of The Wind in the Willows where they had the open road, the gypsy caravan in there, and I thought that was fantastic. And I wanted to build one for myself and go off traveling around the country. I even put that I wanted to be a gypsy when I was 7 years old in one of those exercises you do at school.
That'd be good for the careers master, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mrs. Court, we'd like to have a chat with you about your son.
I just kept on building and drawing things that I wanted to build, and my parents really encouraged me with that. I was very fortunate, and then I thought I wanted to do architecture. But when I was at school, and I was sort of 8 or 9 years old, the school had a DT department. It was very small, but he was also the art master, and they made an awful lot more of art at my school than they did of DT. But he saw my potential and he really encouraged me. He invested funds in letting me do my own projects, which weren't necessarily part of the curriculum. He even let me build a trebuchet in my final year, just completely from scratch.
Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. He was fantastic. And that led to me becoming the school's first design and technology scholar. And that took me on to Denstone College, which is a school immediately behind the JCB World Headquarters. I think they still have quite a relationship. There's certainly a historic one there. In fact, they contributed to the design and technology department of construction. And again, I was very fortunate. There were two teachers there that taught design and technology, and they too could see my potential, and they really encouraged me on. And all the time, my parents have sort of said, well, it doesn't really matter what you want to do when you get older. You know, if you want to go farming, then go farming. But all that we ask is that you have a solid education and something that you can fall back on if times become hard. And with my love for design and technology, and I wasn't too bad at science, my parents said, well, why don't you study engineering at university? So I looked at all the different university degrees, and I decided that I wanted to study mechanical engineering. And there were loads of different universities. I'm sure you know, Andy, having your own children, that you go around all these different universities, and sometimes you just step onto a particular campus, start walking around particular facilities, and you suddenly think, wow, this is the right fit. And that's exactly what happened when I went to Harper. I went there for an open day, and it just seemed like the complete marriage of two great passions of mine, farming and engineering. And it was the absolute perfect marriage. So when I left school, I went to Harper.
You've just given me a flashback to an open day in 1988, and you put it in words I couldn't have said it better myself, Andrew. So I completely agree.
No, so that took me to Harper Adams, studying agricultural engineering, and I've listened to other Harper alumni who've been through the journey, and they all go in saying, "Oh, I thought I wanted to go in design tractors and do all this stuff." That was where they were when they arrived, and then when you leave, you'd found that you had a passion for something completely different, but still engineering related. So I think that was my journey. I mean, I had an absolute fantastic time. The real highlight for me was my placement year. I was very fortunate to go and work for Case New Holland Industrial, as it became whilst I was there, and working in their field test department, spending 6 months at the factory in Basildon, and another 6 months working at their test facility out near Newmarket. And it was just an absolutely fabulous experience, learning all sorts of different aspects that you just don't get from the education system. It's real life scenarios, applying that degree of common sense and applying what you've learned in the real world. So I found that really invaluable. I came back for my 4th year. I had a fantastic dissertation project, which I absolutely loved.
What was that dissertation on?
Oh, I'm afraid is
it still classified?
It's still classified.
Oh my goodness!
Confidentiality.
Right. Okay. It was a blue project, clearly.
Yes, it was to help New Holland and Case in the testing of particular aspects of the tractor.
We need say no more. That's fine. You could tell us, but then you'd have to kill us. I understand.
Yeah, I don't fancy.
So let's move on to after uni then.
So after university, because I'd been going to Denston, which was a long, it was over an hour away every day there and an hour back. And then Harper again, because I lived relatively close, it's very difficult for me to find digs, and I commuted from home an awful lot. So I decided I just wanted to take stock and think about things before I moved on and found my next role. So I went back to the family farm.
Just diving at this. I apologise for diving in. When did you return? So what was the year when you went back to the farm?
So I graduated in 2014. So
okay, right, yeah, gotcha.
11 years ago.
Yep.
So I returned to the family farm, and the idea was to stay there 6 months, just relax a little bit, take time, think about what I wanted to do. But the reality was I ended up staying there a couple of years. I did lots of work experience in the meantime. I went to a couple of civil engineering companies such as WSP and Hawley. They designed building services and things like that, which is a very different area of engineering, but I still found it very, very interesting, particularly on the more bespoke buildings that they worked on. But I realized as I came out of university that I had a deeper interest than I realized for soil. I briefly looked at, or I spent quite a lot of time looking at setting up my own contracting business, focusing on offering services to promote soil health. So it was at a time where strip tillage was starting to become a fashion, and things like that. But ultimately, I realized that the risk was just too high in an area that's full of dairy farmers and livestock farmers. The plough will take an awful lot of dislodging, particularly at that point in time. So I kept working at the family farm, and then unfortunately I had an illness, which took me out of action for about a year, which was really difficult. And then sort of during that year, my parents decided that they wanted to buy the remaining shares of the family farm, because both myself and my brother, we had a passion to farm. We wanted to farm. So they thought, well, let's give them the opportunity. So it took 3 years, but eventually, fast forwarding to 2020, just as the whole world was going into lockdown, we took on the family farm. But a caveat here, we didn't inherit any machinery or any livestock or anything. We literally had a crumbling farm and a blank canvas. So the time, because I knew this was coming off, the time I spent recovering from my illness, I spent doing a lot of research, a lot of planning, trying to decide what we wanted to do, and building a business plan basically from that. And that's how I deployed my time. And we started this business right at the start of lockdown.
Farming from scratch. There could be a book there. So tell us about your journey following qualifications then, Andrew.
So I think, as I said before, it was a little bit about finding myself and learning things, trying to decide where I wanted to go. But once I decided that I wanted to go down this farming route, the engineer in me wanted that professional development journey to take, and it's not particularly easy to find that journey in agriculture. There's no chartered agriculturalist, for want of a better description. Farming is so fragmented that every profession has very specific qualifications. So if you want to be an agronomist, you do your basis and your facts. If you want to look after livestock, there's a whole plethora of different small qualifications that you need. But I wanted to continue to develop my career, and I needed to find a path of doing that. I already had an affiliation with the IAGE, so I spoke to them and learned a bit more about becoming a chartered environmentalist, and sort of I've been working on a path to develop my career with that as the ultimate goal ever since. So that has involved doing things like my basis qualification, which I've nearly finished. It's involved things like putting myself forward for the Oxford Farming Conference scholarships. And I've thrown myself into a program called Just Farmers, which is about media training for farmers to give them the confidence to communicate with the wider world and really tell their story, which I find invaluable. And there's all sorts of different things. I'm now on the NFU Future Leaders program, and I'm just always seeking those opportunities to learn and really better myself as much as I can.
Yeah, and I think getting out of your comfort zone is really healthy, and getting alongside people to stimulate and stretch and pique your interest and scratch your curiosity and examine your thinking. It's very healthy at any stage in a career. Is recognizing the importance of not being surrounded by people who agree with you.
No, absolutely, and I have to say to the listeners that I very much felt out of my comfort zone. It was something that a graduate me would not want to do. I really didn't want to put myself out there, but during my illness, I did realize that I needed to push myself and try and be better. And that's when I really started to do this. And here I am today with it paying dividends. So
do you have any sort of current leadership roles, if you like, in terms of where you've pushed yourself for experience outside of the farm?
Absolutely. So I've just completed a year as chairman of the under-35s of the Farmers Club, which is a 600 strong membership for the Farmers Club in London. So I'd been on the committee for a year before I threw myself into the vice chair and then chairman role. I've had a really fantastic year. I've thrown myself into being chair of the Staffordshire Local Nature Recovery Group. I'm the chairman of their farmer stakeholder team, where farmers have a say as to how the county should implement environmental change and how farmers can play a part in that. That's another role that I'm involved with. And those are sort of the leadership side of where I am, but I've also thrown myself into loads of other teams and opportunities. There's a group called the Future Food Movement, which is trying to provide major food processors with a bit more of a environmental farming and sort of policy level of education, and try and remove the layers of yes men in between their suppliers and themselves to understand what the real world problems are with what they're trying to implement, whether that be scope 3 or pricing and the weather or policy, where education is lacking in food, all sorts of things like that. I could go on with a huge list of things. I tend to throw myself into an awful lot.
So, thinking about the agricultural engineering and the fact that you are a farmer by day, how does the ag engineering play out in your day job?
It plays out in every aspect of the day job, really. I mentioned that when I started to research into what the business could do, I very much followed the path of a development project or a design project. So we sort of sat down and said, well, what do we want to do? Well, we want to farm. I took that as a design brief. So I got to find a way of making money by farming. There was no diversification.
There's nothing like a large blank sheet of paper and a pen, is there?
No, absolutely not. So then I went through the processes. So I went through the research. I said, what types of farming are there out there? So I spoke to dairy farmers, to beef farmers, sheep farmers, arable farmers, vegetable farmers, to really understand what different opportunities there were out there. I looked at our soils, I looked at governmental policy, and I created all this research. And from that, we sort of built a design specification, or we narrowed down the design brief. So we decided that, yes, we wanted to farm. We were going to put the soil at the heart of everything. The environment was going to play a huge part in what we do. And it needed to be, to turn an operational profit naturally. So then you start to really research in those areas. So we were going to look after the soil. So that was things like direct drilling. We sort of found the regen movement and things like that. And that's something that's grown. The environmental side, we're actually in a Severn Trent groundwater catchment zone. So there's lots of things that they would like us to do to improve their water quality and improve the diversity around the boreholes and things like that. So I treat it very much like a design project. And health and safety is very much designed into every project that we do as well. We've designed a cattle handling facility that means that one person can very safely complete all cattle jobs if necessary. Normally we work with 2 to 3 people, but if one person needs to do it because there's a big emergency on, then they are safe and able to do so.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of process has been ingrained within what I do and how I approach things. I think that some of the other modules have played a very important part that we did at Harper. So we did a marketing and financial module in our final year, and I financially model everything to make a decision. I don't make a decision based on gut feeling. It's based on, I've sat down in front of a spreadsheet and
done the numbers.
Viability of...
Well, we know the phrase, don't we? The numbers never lie.
Exactly. So there's an awful lot of maths brought to our operation. And again, data, most farmers probably don't work with data and information, but we're on contracts where we weigh our cattle every 2 or 3 weeks to look at their growth rates and to predict finishing times and things like that. And it all plays into carbon footprints and all sorts. Just the vastness of the amount of information we gather to make decisions, I think very much comes from an engineering mindset. Yeah,
being able to break it into relevant parts. So moving on from that, what role does volunteering play in your life and why? And maybe think about your life as an agricultural engineer and the institution at this point.
So I volunteer for an awful lot, whether that be research projects or assisting other organisations. I like to think that I play my small part with the Institute of Agricultural Engineers. For the last 4 years, I've edited all of their videos, the lunchtime lectures, and other promotional stuff. And to me, that's really about providing a medium by which other engineers can learn if they're not able to attend the Zoom call or whatever it might be at the time. Just giving them that opportunity to attend what is actually a fantastic and usually very informative event. So I think that just by being able to show that or to provide that service to other people is hugely beneficial. And again, offering myself up for research projects and things like that. The Society for the Environment, they ran a project off the back of their soil and stones report, and I got involved with one of their small projects, which was shaping how you could have a uniform curriculum towards soils. What are the key aspects of the soil education at university, whether you're a farmer or whether you're a miner or a waste contractor or whatever you might be studying? What are the key things that need to be taught in all university curriculum towards soil? And I found that fascinating, but I brought a very different list of topics to the table that the rest of the industry, which was, yes, an eye-opener for me.
So alongside the I agree, what else? I mean, I think I've scribbled in my margin here the Andrew Court quote, which is "thrown myself into," which clearly that is your catchphrase. What else have you thrown yourself into in the world of volunteering?
Well, the Farmers Club, as I've already mentioned, that's the voluntary initiative. I've thrown myself into a number of research projects, primarily through LEAF. So I've recently concluded a project about the introduction of cultured meat into the UK and what its implications and opportunities would be for farming. I'm a member of their water management best practice team, and we've recently filmed some videos to highlight all the different measures that farmers could consider when trying to improve their water quality and water management on farm. And they're also very similar. The farm itself, I've put it forward as a climate demo farm for the Royal Agricultural Society of England. So we're part of a pan-Europe project, which is comparing carbon footprints and looking at how different people are achieving different things. And that's a fascinating project to be involved with. And then we also help other companies run trials. King's Crops, which is a subsidiary of Frontier, they've had trials days here, but they generally end up with me giving a huge farm walk around the farm to say, well, look how amazing it is when you don't.
Why not?
Frontier pesticides.
Yeah.
So it's I do an awful lot.
So you're very clearly a very, very busy chap. So on reflection, what's the best piece of advice you were given or you would give now? Oh,
I think the best piece of advice I was given, I think that I remember an iAgri branch lecture given. So I'm a member of Wrekin branch, and one of the few I went to one a few years ago, given by Kit Franklin. Just as I think the hands-free hectare had finished, but the hands-free farm had started, and Kit said, I always include this slide in my presentations, and it was his second slide, and it was a picture of a T20. And all Kit said was, we used to farm with something this big. Why do we need something 400 horsepower now? And I've always sort of thought about that when I'm choosing machinery and thinking about things. Why does it need to, why are we going bigger? And that's always resonated with me. I think advice for others, I think that engineering offers fantastic opportunities. I'm sure we all agree on that. I don't learn by reading books. I really, really struggle. It's not how I learn, but how I do learn is by talking and meeting people. So I think it's invaluable to create a network of professionals around you, people that you can call on when you're not sure about something or you want to know more about something. that's something that I've learned throughout my career, and I'm very pleased to say that I do have such a huge range of different people to call on if I'm not sure about something or I'm thinking about doing something different. Because at the end of the day, we can't be a professional in absolutely everything. We can't be an expert. But it's about having all the different jigsaw pieces where you can pull the right ones together at the time for what you need.
Yeah, be a community of practice.
Absolutely.
No, quite agree. Couldn't agree more. So stepping back from the immediate and the personal, what do you think are the key issues facing agricultural engineering going forwards?
The key issues going forwards, I think that food processors are sneaking Scope 3 emissions slightly under the radar. So carbon emissions are becoming a bigger and bigger topic, and they could explode in the next 2 to 3 years. And farmers are going to need the tools not only to be able to reduce their carbon footprints, but understand them in the first place. So I think that there is a need for an ability to gather a lot more data, but also I think there's a need for agreed upon and grounded research as well in that area. I also think that machines are becoming increasingly expensive to purchase. The biggest challenge we have on our farm is capital outlay. As a running concern, it's a very profitable organisation, but when you start to think that you've got to buy this kit to in the first place, it becomes very difficult. To give you an example, we're looking at buying a combine, and we've considered all different options, whether that be a brand new one or an ex-demonstrator or something that's 30 years old. And when you start to crunch the numbers, a brand new combine from a particular brand that I won't name, they're sort of £179,000 for a brand new combine that in their brochure says is designed to combine up to 400 acres a year. If you run the figures for that combine to turn a profit and to pay it off in 10 years, that it needs to be doing 800 acres a year, something it's not designed for. So I think machinery prices are becoming
challenging.
Yes, very challenging. So I think that sort of realization does need to be addressed. Money won't be cheap forever. So that's another challenge that I would highlight as well.
Anything to do with the technology? Because I've been involved in precision farming for nearly 30 years on and off, and stuff never used to talk to each other. Is it getting better?
No, if that's something else that I think we need, I think we need a much more common language. I think Isobus is getting there. I have got some fantastic technology on my seed drill. I think one piece is actually unique to me in the UK because nobody else has bothered to buy it. But getting everything to talk to one another, whilst it's becoming increasingly easy to do it, it's still not perfect. So I think we need a common language there. And I think there could be a much wider sharing of data that could streamline a lot of tasks that the farmer has to do on a daily basis that engineers perhaps haven't even considered yet. So for farm assurance, we're required to keep stock lists of our pesticides and things like that. But yet no software engineer has sort of said, well, hold on, all plant products have a barcode. Why don't we pull all the barcodes, and then the farmer could have an app on his phone. He could scan it as it comes into the store. He could scan it every time he takes a bit out. He could pen in how much he's taken out, and that will keep a constant live feed what's in his store. And that could also be accessible by the fire service in the event of a disaster, and the Environment Agency.
And you could do the same with animal health products.
Absolutely, you can do the same with drugs as well. And in fairness, animal drugs are far closer to doing that than plant products. But plant products we probably sell a great deal more of.
Yeah, volume-wise and cost-wise.
Absolutely. So I think that integration of data and even the carbon footprint calculators, it's very difficult to transfer information from your agronomy software or your livestock management software into those carbon calculators, even though all the information's there, it's just not compatible. And that gets really annoying when you have to triplicate everything that you're doing to be able to tick all the boxes with your paperwork.
Yeah.
So I do think that there is a great deal of integration there, and passing out, your spray sheets to the sprayer and things like that. I've got a fantastic Trimble screen, which is capable of connecting to the internet. Why can't I have it that I can create a spray sheet in my on my computer, send it immediately appears on my GPS screen, and I can assign it into the sprayer, and then the sprayer knows what rates it's.
And just crack on.
And just crack on. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah, no, that's a fair comment. So what advice, I appreciate you may not quite be at the end of your agricultural engineering career quite yet, Andrew, but going well so far, what advice would you offer to anyone heading into ag engineering or considering ag engineering as a career?
I think that engineering can be quite a daunting subject, particularly if maths isn't your strong point or anything like that. But my advice would be to throw yourself into it. Don't be afraid that there's a lot of professional people in the industry, but agricultural engineering in particular is a very welcoming sector.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to strike up a conversation and to talk to people and to learn from people. So ask would be my advice. As I mentioned before, build that network, get to know people, get yourself out to conferences, read articles of interest, and just grow a network to support you and to communicate with. It's brilliant for your CV. It's brilliant to assist you in your career, and it just makes the whole thing an awful lot easier.
Thinking on the sort of network and external inspiration theme, if you like, can you recommend any podcasts or YouTube channels or other sources to sort of get your juices flowing, shall we say?
Well, I've recently started binge listening to Brash Ag. Kit is a good friend of mine, and
yeah.
I know Ray King a little, and I do find that quite an interesting and
ditto. I enjoy it immensely.
Yes, I think it's sort of, particularly in ag engineering, it's slightly reminiscent of sitting at the kitchen table and having a chat with a cup of tea.
Yes.
So, I think that's
and it's good night from him.
Yes, absolutely. There's another more agronomy based podcast that I listen to called Crop It Whilst It's Hot. I like that because it's not particularly a lot of those podcasts tend to be sponsored by pesticide companies or fertilizer companies, whereas this one isn't so much. So I find it's a bit more independent, and it gives a good overview of particular topics as well. So I do enjoy that. The civil engineer in me, and this might be because we feature on his channel, but I do enjoy Lee Gilbert, Go Big or Go Home, which is a YouTube channel. And that is the agricultural building company, Fowler and Gilbert. They sort of showcase the projects that they're doing, but not only that, they talk you through the technical aspects of why they're doing certain things, and it's just gives you that little bit more information whilst being quite funny. So I do enjoy that on a Sunday morning as well.
Okay, well, look, we have covered an awful lot of ground very, very quickly, Andrew. So at this point, I think it's probably fair to say thank you very much for your time. I found this fascinating today. I think let's draw it to a close. So, thanks again to Andrew Court, Staffordshire arable and beef farmer, agricultural engineer extraordinaire. Thank you, Andrew.
No, thank you for having me, Andy. It's been a blast.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. And you've been listening to the Landwards podcast. More episodes soon. Thank you very much. And I shall say it's goodbye from Andy Newbold, and it's goodbye from Andrew Court.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Thanks for listening.
For more information, visit www.iagri.org. You have been listening to Landwards, the podcast for the land-based engineering community, brought to you by the Institution of Agricultural Engineers.